It's a Minimalist Monday edition of Optimal Finance Daily, episode 346. 4 Lessons on Money I Learned After Making $1 Million by Jeff Goins with BecomingMinimalist.com. And I am Dan, your host here on the podcast, where I read to you from some of the best personal finance blogs on the planet. And today's post comes from a guest author on BecomingMinimalist.com, Jeff Goins. He is a writer from Nashville, and his new book, Real Artists Don't Starve, teaches creatives how to make a living off their creativity without selling out. And before we get to his post, big thanks to Alt MBA for sponsoring today's episode. Seth Godin's Alt MBA workshop brings together leaders who want to level up and make a bigger impact. They're now accepting applications for their upcoming session, and to learn more, come by altmba.com/optimalfinance. Now let's get right to today's post as we optimize your life. 4 Lessons on Money I Learned After Making $1 Million by Jeff Goins with BecomingMinimalist.com. I had $1 million and I spent it all. Sublime. A few years ago, I made $1 million. I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just stating it as fact. I never imagined making $1 million in my life, but I did. And honestly, I expected this accomplishment to make me feel something. Significant, perhaps? Instead, I was left underwhelmed. Not empty, not fulfilled, just indifferent. What, I wondered, was behind this feeling? Around this time, I began to work on my new project, which would eventually become Real Artists Don't Starve, a book about creativity and business and why art and money can go together. So here I was writing a book on why money wasn't a bad thing, but not sure I believed my message anymore. So I did what I always do when I have questions. I asked my friends for feedback. One person, the preacher who officiated my wedding, wrote and said, "That's great that you're not overwhelmed by your own success, but I'm not sure underwhelmed is what I would be feeling if I were you. I think I would feel grateful." Oh yes, gratitude. That. What happened over the next couple of years was a series of steps that led me to stop growing my business, focus on the things that really mattered to me, and put money in its proper place. 1. Money can't fulfill us. I grew up lower middle class. My parents often fought about money, and we were trained to not answer the phone during dinner because that's when the bill collectors would call. I was afraid of debt and never wanted much money. I just didn't want to need anything from anyone. This ambition drove me towards success, and before I knew it, I had launched a business helping other writers called Tribe Writers and was making 10 times my previous income as a nonprofit marketing director. Making money became easier for me, and I enjoyed the process, so I did more of it. I set higher goals and achieved them. I reached for more and obtained it. It didn't feel greedy, more like a game that I wanted to keep winning. Yes, it was nice to pay off debt and get nicer stuff, but I noticed after a certain point, the more money I made, the less happy it made me. It wasn't that it made me miserable or anything like that, it just ceased to impact my life. The research on this is interesting. Once you get past a certain income level, more money doesn't really affect your happiness at all. And after a certain point, it can make your life more difficult and more complicated. What I learned was just because I was good at something didn't mean I had to keep doing it. So I decided to stop trying to beat last year's number. 2. Money is a better means than master. When he was at the height of his success, Walt Disney received a letter from a critic who implied that Mr. Disney was in the business of making movies just for the money. He replied, "We don't make films to make money. We make money to make more films." For Disney, it wasn't about the money, but he understood that it cost money, a lot of money, to make the kind of art he cared about making. He had to pay his artists. He had to pay for the film. He had to pay for the actors. It all cost something. Of course, we understand this. For most of us, money is necessary. We have to buy groceries and pay the mortgage. Certainly we can minimize our expenses, but money is part of life. What I learned in my very underwhelming year of making $1 million is that, at least for me, the acquisition of wealth is not enough to drive me. There has to be some bigger picture, some greater vision I'm trying to obtain. My friend Stu taught me this when I was feeling disillusioned about my business. Stu is a very successful digital entrepreneur who runs a charity that builds schools in Kenya. And he told me, "Jeff, I stopped making money for myself a long time ago. What drives me today is generating income to build more schools. That's why I do it." After I heard this, I immediately started giving 10% of the gross sales of my business to a fund that gets dispersed to various charities and nonprofits, including organizations like the Hope Effect. It turns out, though, that money makes a better means than master. What I mean by that is if you're doing your work to gain more, this is a pursuit that will leave you feeling empty, bored, and disenchanted. 3. Money is a bad metric for meaning. When I was writing my book, Real Artists Don't Starve, I was able to interview the fourth man who walked on the moon, Alan Bean. At roughly 50 years old, Alan left his career as an astronaut to become a full-time artist. Everyone thought Alan was crazy. Who walks away from a job at NASA after all? But he did it, and he ended up doing very well as an artist. As a matter of fact, if you go to Alan's website right now, alanbean.com, you can find his artwork on sale for anywhere from $50,000 to over $400,000. In my interview with Alan, I made the mistake of saying art must have been Alan's passion for him to leave his job as an astronaut for it. That's when he corrected me, saying, I didn't leave my job as an astronaut because I had this creative urge. I left because I felt it was my duty to do these paintings to celebrate this great event I was blessed to be a part of. Alan makes a lot of money off his art, but like Walt Disney, he doesn't make art to make money. He makes money to make more art. As a writer, I've accepted the fact that I have to make money off my writing if I want to spend most of my time doing it. But honestly, I don't do it for the royalty checks. I do it because I have to. It's my duty. 4. A final warning. In the book Shoe Dog, Phil Knight wrote about his somewhat sudden success at Nike. Quote, when it came rolling in, the money affected us all. Not much and not for long because none of us was ever driven by money. But that's the nature of money. Whether you have it or not, whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, it will try to define your days. Our task as human beings is not to let it. End quote. This is true. Money affects us all, even when we don't want it to. I realized this when I started making more money than I ever had. At first it was fun, and then it almost became a burden. I started to fear losing things I did not even possess just a few years before. Finally, I took Phil's advice and chose to not let money define my days. Like Alan Bean, I went to work because it was my calling, not because I was driven to increase. And at the encouragement of my friends too, I started using these resources to play my part in projects that were bigger than me. And that actually did make me happy. You just listened to the post titled 4 Lessons on Money I Learned After Making $1 Million by Jeff Goins with BecomingMinimalist.com. And once again, big thanks to Alt MBA for sponsoring today's episode. If you're looking to level up and make a bigger impact, definitely check out Seth Godin's Alt MBA workshop. The Alt MBA brings together 2 groups of over 100 leaders from a wide mix of industries and areas of expertise. Split into groups each week, you'll be surrounded by other leaders who are moving to the top of their respective fields, and you'll all be helping and supporting each other along the way. You'll have 13 projects to work on during the month, and actively learning and building habits that you can use in the real world. This isn't your typical school environment with passive learning and boring lectures. And yes, it's tough, but the Alt MBA has a high completion rate of 96%. So come check it out. Visit altmba.com/optimalfinance to learn more. And for special consideration, you can mention this podcast and tell them that I sent you. And that's going to do it for another Minimalist Monday here on Optimal Finance Daily. Tomorrow we're going to have another post from Early Retirement Extreme. So I'll see you there where your optimal life awaits.
Hello, Life Optimizer. This is Justin Malik, creator and producer of this podcast, but also Optimal Living Daily, the show where I read to you from even more blogs covering finance, productivity, minimalism, personal development, and more from incredible bloggers like Derek Sivers, Zen Habits, Mark and Angel, The Minimalists, and all the ones you hear on this show too. So if you enjoyed today's episode and like taking amazing blogs on the go, come on over to Optimal Living Daily and subscribe to that one too. And together, we'll start optimizing your life.
You've been listening to Optimal Finance Daily. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on each new episode and head to oldpodcast.com. That's OLDpodcast.com for a free gift as well as more actionable tips and resources to help you maximize your potential. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your optimal life awaits.